On this episode of Inside Bremerton, grab your thinking caps and safety goggles. We're going behind the scenes of the 58th Annual Washington State Science and Engineering Fair. We'll show you some of the neatest exhibits from across the state, hear from some pretty excited young scientists, and find out what it takes to make the largest science fair in Washington State more than just a hypothesis. All this and more, Inside Bremerton starts now.
So science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM, is important today because it is the future. Everything that the children are doing today are going to make a difference for us in our community, our society, and our world tomorrow.
It gives them a vehicle to learn about something they're interested in, whatever they like to do.
Science is a field that you're never going to have all the answers because some answers lead to new questions.
Fell into science and just found it was cool to be able to build something and watch it work and perform amazing tasks. I built robots that play sports better than I do, and it's cool to just look at it and go, hey, I built that, I can do that.
Nothing succeeds like success. When they get a positive stroke here, when they see what they can do, it gives them very, very real encouragement to go on to the next step.
Well, they could be on a cutting edge, they're learning new things, and then there's discovering and inventing. That's the thing about, that's great about science. You get to be using your creative ideas and convert the creative ideas into something that's useful and something that maybe we have never thought of before.
Many scientists don't work in a lab, they don't wear a lab coat, they're out in the woods, they're out interviewing people. They can collect data and observations about anything.
It's important for students to understand the process of science, and that's what they're doing here. They're learning how science is a process in addition to just being a collection of facts in a book.
I think science is really important, and it's a really fun field to be in because you're directly helping people, especially in engineering and medicine, what I'm in, you're directly affecting people's lives, and it's really a fulfilling field to be in.
It's a warm spring day on the last weekend of March as hundreds of kids pour into Bremerton High School. You've probably never seen young students so eager to go to school on a weekend. For dozens of these young scientists, they've been waiting an entire year to show off their projects at the Washington State Science and Engineering Fair, and that number keeps growing. We caught up with Fair Treasurer Carolyn Stein to explain just how large the science fair has become, despite some humble beginnings.
You know, when we first started, it was with the Bremerton PTA, so that was a school science fair. That was small. But now, being as we're the state fair, we have more than 650 students, we have more than 600 projects, we have 300 judges, 100 teachers, we have a plethora of volunteers that just come from everywhere. I know Bonneville Power Administration sends up 50 just from Oregon area alone. We have volunteers that come in, parents step up. It's a wonderful thing. It started in 1957. Gwen Crosswaite was our founder. She was with the Bremerton PTA. And the Bremerton PTA decided they wanted to hold a science fair, and they wanted it for both boys and girls. And so it took quite the letter writing campaign to get all that started because they wanted to include little girls into it. About 1985, we started doing the regional fair. We partnered with Olympic College. We aligned with the Intel International Science and Engineering Fair, and that became, we're allowed to have one state fair in each of our 50 states. And this is the one and only state fair. So we have students that travel from all over the state to come just to this fair to participate. Our top award winners are selected, and we send them off to the Intel International Science and Engineering Fair, where they compete against 70 countries worldwide. This is the biggest stepping stone for the state.
Did we mention that the Washington State Science and Engineering Fair has over $1.8 million in prizes and scholarships? $1.8 million. Bottom line, the competition is real. Educational Outreach Director Gary Foss elaborates on how the top innovators from this fair move on to collectively form what has been dubbed Team Washington.
Every year there are about 10 to 13 students collectively who've been selected by the regional fairs. And we've tried to promote kind of a solidarity with them, and we call them Team Washington. We give them all a Team Washington T-shirt, and they're kind of proud of at the Intel Fair of being from Washington State. Some of our students have done very well from this fair. We had one student who won a Broadcom award and ended up being a finalist. He went to Washington, D.C. He ended up at the White House Science Fair and got to shake hands with the president. There's another student that won the top award here a couple of years ago, and I've kind of kept in touch with him. He went to MIT on a scholarship, and I just read that last summer he had an internship at a nuclear institute in Moscow, Russia. He got to spend the summer there working with the researchers. So there's great opportunities here.
Not every student is in it just for the glory and awards, so we asked them, what's your favorite part about science?
My favorite part about science is just the mystery and the hope to find out everything about it, because there are so many mysteries that the world hasn't discovered yet that I want to solve.
My favorite part about science is all the unknown factor.
My favorite part about science is how we get to do like all the hands-on type of stuff, like where we get to put things together and like mix ingredients to make a whole bunch of other cool stuff.
Kinetic energy, potential energy.
I just like talking to the judges. I think it's really fun. I just like being interviewed. I just like talking about science too.
Acceleration, velocity.
I just like the exploring and all the things I get to do, and it's like adventuring through the knowledge of physics.
System energy, thermal energy.
I enjoy that you get to solve the equations and find out a problem. Then it makes me feel like excited when I find out the solution to things.
The fact that you get to learn different things from testing stuff and you learn from your mistakes.
Hi, Mom.
As you can tell, these young kids get awfully excited about sharing their projects with adults. And some of their ambitious research might just make your head spin, like this little boy working to cure diseases of the brain with Legos?
It's about genetics. I was trying to cure Matt because he has this genetic disease called ALD, short for adrenoleukodystrophy. And ALD is a genetic disease that causes the myelin in the brain, the fat in the brain, to go away. The brain won't be able to send messages to the body, and it can lead to death. So when I found out that Matt had this genetic disease, I wanted to cure him, but I can't work with genetics for this project or build something nano. So I thought, like, if I could make a proxy, a big robot, I could later figure out how to make it nano. So what you should see happening is the bars represent the code, and then the blue.
I think I could probably tell you best by a story that happened about 15 years ago. And it was my first fair. And a little girl came running up to me, and she latched onto my leg, and I looked down, and she had the most cutest little butterfly barrettes in her hair, and I looked down at her, and she looked up at me, and she said, "I'm scared." And I said, "Why?" And she goes, "It's my first fair." And I said, "Mine too." And I told her, I said, "Just smile for the judges, tell them about your project, it'll be great. Do you have a good project?" She goes, "Yes, I worked hard on my project, and I want to tell the judges." Short time later, that same little girl came back, latched back onto my leg, looked up at me, and she said, "That was fabulous. The judges cared. They listened. They got down and they listened to me talk about my project. They wanted to hear what I did." That's the reason. So I looked at her and I said, "Well, are you coming back next year?" And she said, "Only if you do."
I am all about encouraging kids to do science. And I am all about, I think kids, when they get something and they've achieved something, bringing a board to a science fair, having a project, at least going through the motions, even if they didn't get really in depth, they did something. They did more than the kids staying home did. They should have something to show for it.
I think, students enjoy this sort of thing. Students who, they may not be the A+ student in your class, but they really enjoy it. Once students start this, they kind of get hooked on it. They like to do projects.
And these kids are bright. They come up with the most amazing things. Some of the kids, professional companies see these projects and say, "Oh, that's a good idea." They take these kids up with it. But even the younger kids, they come so excited about everything. And it's really great to see.
15 years. That's why I'm still here. Because those younger kids are the ones. They're the ones. And if we can get them interested now and just give that little spark in them, that chance to develop, that's what it's all about.
While it's a part of the mission to encourage scientific exploration among the younger generation, many of the high school age participants are coming into the fair with their own ideas about why the future of science is so important.
Science can be made to engineer the future, of course, and it can make our problems better.
We have many issues. We have global warming, we have computers advancing, we have cybercrime, and these are not necessarily scientific issues, but we need people who are more technologically aware.
It's really important, especially nowadays with all the global warming and all the various science aspects and things going on, that people do this kind of research, that they try every idea, no matter how dumb it may sound.
Make the next best thing, the thing that's important to everyone, 6 billion people can all be touched by technology.
My teacher told us to do projects on ways to help the environment, things that were wrong in our community.
Science is important to me because without science, we don't advance as a race, as humanity.
Science is what's going to fix the world, and it's what's going to make all the problems that we have right now better.
Science is great because it helps explain so many phenomena that we really don't know that much about, and one of the most exciting things about science is being on the forefront of creating new knowledge.
We can solve almost every single problem we have with science, other than social problems. But with the way the world is going with carbon emissions and different problems that we're facing today, science is what's going to take us the step further and actually get us out of this hole.
While science and biology classes are required learning in schools across the state, science fair projects, however, are often not incorporated into student learning. Midge Jurgen, a middle school teacher with roots in Central Kitsap, was this year's Science Teacher of the Year winner. She explains why the science fair project is essential in her classroom.
I think in this day of assessment, where we're assessing everything about our kids, that when you look at a project-based learning, it encompasses so many areas. And the science project teaches technical writing. It teaches creative presentations and art skills. It teaches science research, mathematical data collection. It is truly a STEM activity. And as we're looking towards STEM in our future, this is the way to go.
When they get into middle school, that's when kids start thinking about careers and what am I going to do with the rest of my life. And so from middle school to high school, that's when it gets really important to engage kids. We've found that the resumes that they develop from their science fair awards and experiences serves them well when they go apply to colleges. I had the admissions director of Stanford University tell me that these science fair kids that win awards get moved to the head of the line.
When you're 12 years old or 13 years old or younger, and you show the students what it is that they're going to create at the end of the term, the writing that they have to do, the display board, the journal, the scientific journal. Their eyes get really big and they're scared. And I said, this is like an elephant. And the only way you eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So we're going to chunk this little piece by little piece by little piece. And 2.5 months later, they can't believe that they've accomplished what they've accomplished. And they're proud of themselves. I'm proud of them. And their parents realize that these are lifelong skills that they're going to need as they continue, not only through their education, but in life, problem solving. So it's inspiring.
The Washington State Science and Engineering Fair is helping teachers to overcome the challenges of tackling the elephant. While the students make their presentations, a handful of teachers are getting their own lesson on how to incorporate the science project into their classrooms. Ashley Steele, a researcher with the State Forest Service, and Seattle teacher Catherine Kelsey explained their mission to help local science teachers.
We're trying to give teachers a little more insight into the science research process, kind of from the standpoint of what scientists actually do.
We heard today, so we asked teachers to brainstorm what makes a good research project and what are the parts that are hardest to teach in their classroom. And we heard today, and we've seen in a lot of other workshops, that for teachers to help students proactively identify a really good research question, one that they can reasonably successfully answer, is a challenge that takes a lot of experience. And we try to provide some tips or ideas for how to make that successful.
A lot of teachers are uncomfortable with many different projects going on in the classroom at the same time. That's too much chaos for them in their minds. They want to have more control over what's happening.
The science fair is the place where students are encouraged to ask their own research question. And that is the time when they're the most like a scientist. And it's hard to ask your own research question. I mean, it's hard to do a lot of the steps, to follow a procedure, to do things, but to actually take ownership from the research question all the way through the data, the analysis, and the presentation is a unique experience. And it's really hard to find that in the classroom.
Besides exhibits, the fair also has a number of activities for parents and students. A handful of vocational and educational groups make sure to visit the fair every year with hands-on activities for kids to enjoy.
And you know what? Kids love, things that they can interact with. And this is something that they can interact with. And if you look at different tables, it's a lot of brochures and a lot of, reading and stuff like that. They might not like that.
The most exciting thing is when kids will come and do our activity and say, oh cool, the pH test turned a different color, or look at those cells, look at that DNA. It's really cool for them to discover these experiments for themselves.
If you look at it, there's a lot of things that has been invented in a lab, using a scientific approach to it. But you could do scientific approach doing out in the field. A lot of things was discovered accidentally by combining this with this, or doing this with this lever, or just doing chemical reaction, or doing mechanical advantage, discovering different things.
So the activity we have today is a CSI activity. We call it CSI Seattle. And the idea is that there was a synthetic biologist who was murdered, and we want to figure out who the suspect, which suspect committed the crime. I think one of the most exciting ones is the DNA extraction, because DNA is something that you hear about, but you don't really see it in real life. So we use strawberries and dishwashing detergent to break down the cells and get the DNA out of the strawberries. And when kids see that the DNA is this very visible, stringy substance, it's so cool because they can actually visualize what they've been hearing about all this time.
Judging a science fair can be tough. Oftentimes, the real struggle is in finding a large enough number of qualified judges. Special Awards head judge Mary Ohnberg explains.
This year we had 575 students register, and we want each student to be judged at least twice, so that you can do the mathematics on that.
The big need every year is judges, and once you come and judge, you kind of see where there are other things you could help do too. So, but the really important thing is judging. Older grades, we like to have professionals that have some science or engineering experience. For the younger kids, grades 1 through 6 or 1 through 7, it's all about encouragement at that age. So, you know, we invite anybody to come in and judge that, you know, wants to talk to kids and encourage them in what they're doing.
On top of that, we have a very large quantity of special awards. In total, we give away over $1.8 million in scholarships, cash awards, and prizes. So we need additional judges to go through and interview students for those awards.
There's also a large volunteer effort that takes place to make sure the fair runs smoothly.
Well, there's a lot to putting on the fair because behind the scenes you have badges, you have paperwork, lots of paperwork.
I need people who will show up at 7 in the morning and help with getting all these kids seated.
All their paperwork has to be checked.
I need people who will be at the end and tear down.
You have the students all get little goodie bags that all have to be stuffed, meals for the judges.
I needed people to sit at the door and monitor to make sure there was just students and judges and official people coming in and out.
Then afterwards you've got thank you notes, you've got to mail awards if students weren't here to pick them up. The award ceremony itself takes a lot of planning.
I went out this morning and there's parents I've seen over the years and I said, I need help, and people do come help. But sometimes you're so busy, it's hard to go out and ask for the help because you've got to do the work. So I mean, I don't know if that's something I should say, but that's really the truth of the matter.
If you can walk, if you can talk, if you like kids, we'll take you.
We love science!
Bottom line, the Washington State Science and Engineering Fair is good for kids. But this annual event also has some unexpected benefits for the city of Bremerton.
I mean, this thing is really, it's huge and it's big and it's good for Bremerton because people are coming from all over the state to Bremerton High School to participate in a science and engineering fair. People from all over the state to get to see what Bremerton has to offer.
Every one of these kids has somebody that brought them here. They're going to the restaurants, they're staying in a hotel. If they come from the east side of the mountains, they're staying in hotels.
93% of our participants come from outside of Kitsap County. They stay in our hotels, they eat in our restaurants, they visit our museums, our memorials, our tourist sites, our parks. It's wonderful when you can have a busload pull up to one of our local hotels and you have that many rooms filled. Literally, we're all volunteers, we're 100% volunteer board, we're 100% volunteers that do this, and we do it for one reason, and it's because of the kids. And it doesn't matter where in the state they live, whether it be in the rural areas or metropolis downtown, every child, grades 1 through 12, has the opportunity to come to their state fair and present their science and engineering project.
So there's lots of resources out there, and there's lots of regional fairs in our state, plus the state science fair, and they all have websites. And there's information, there's people to contact. So you need to start somewhere. I'm not going to say it's not work, but it's probably one of the most valuable things that you'll ever do with your students because it does build a sense of community, a sense of pride, and it's lifelong learning.
If you're passionate about science and you really believe that this kind of thinking and experience can help you make better decisions in your life and interpret information correctly, then I think you really feel like you're contributing to the next generation of not necessarily scientists, but just informed citizenry.
I've had a pretty exciting career, and I would love to see other kids, you know, do the same. And for me, it started with science fairs.
The kids need, maybe it's even more than kids, they need mentors. They need kids that encourage them. They don't understand something, they need somebody to ask to help them figure it out.
This is about your child developing into someone that's going to be a contributing member of society, and parents have everything to do with that. Teachers work with parents to foster and perpetuate greatness. This is greatness.
So be sure to check out the fair next spring. As a participant, a judge, a sponsor, or a volunteer. You can find out more about the fair via their website. And thanks for watching this episode of Inside Bremerton.